Today we're covering one of the basics, dry brushing walls or scenery, 5 paints, no mixing, just dry brushing. So thank you for tuning in again. Today we are covering this hobby staple, the grey wall. It's not particularly as exciting as something else you might have seen before, our glowy wall, but we're going over the fundamentals. So in this I'm going to be covering start to finish how to go through. We're not mixing paints or anything like that. We've really reduced it down to the core essential facts that you need to be able to get a fantastically smooth and high-end result fast on scenery. All of these things you can apply universally. You can mix different colours in, you can change them around, and I've gone quite in depth even though they're simple techniques. This isn't a video for beginners, it's a video for everyone, so stick around because there's a little bit probably for everyone to learn throughout this, whether it's about how to use different shades of white for highlighting to get that extra like high contrast final touch, or how to base coat fast or anything like that. So if you like the video, please give it a like, please subscribe, it really means a lot to us. It's fantastic to see all of you getting involved, and as a result of that, what we're going to be doing from now on is every single month we will be giving a series of SM or D away to someone who's just getting involved. That's not in this particular video, it's in any video, so if people are regularly popping up with good suggestions or comments or whatever, one of the wonderful things about YouTube is that we get your engagement and we really appreciate it, so we want to reward it. So if you've got any thoughts, feedback, questions or suggestions, please do pop them below, and like I said, hit that like button. Okay, so step one, we have undercoated with Chaos Black Primer, which is just a really very good, very predictable spray. Some of them care more about humidity or temperature or stuff like that, but Chaos Black doesn't. And we're giving ourselves a quick stipple base coat of the entire model. This is putting down a foundation. In these top sections in particular, I'm going to be stippling at a 45-degree angle, and the reason for that is I want to leave black in the undersides and shadows of the areas that we have. So if I'm stippling this one at this angle, this area will remain black. So I'll go with all of it like that. The flat areas I'll probably go like this, which is advisable generally for base coating, but any area where I think there's a detail that I want to keep, like this window ledge for example, I can go over that at 45 degrees. Just a quick note, if there's areas like this brick wall area here, I can show you on the reverse. If you do want to maintain a higher degree of shadows, rather than base coating them with stippling, you can base coat with heavy overbrushing or dry brushing, and that'll leave the kind of the more to darker, just if you're looking to push the contrast. So we started with Ash and Grey, and the next stage is Dawnstone. This is quite a bit lighter, it's also a little bit warmer as a paint, but mostly it's just got the tone we're after. Normally I wouldn't take paint from the directly from pots or stuff like that, and I'm carefully with it, but with these Games Workshop lids, one of the advantages of them is the ability to take a tiny bit of what you're after. So take it, work it into the brush. I've used my dampening pad between stages, you'll see me coming back to that shortly, and then we're going to repeat the same step, starting from the top, which is where we want things lighter. You can use a mixture of dry brushing, being backwards and forward stroke stippling, which is the dabbing that I'm doing, and in whatever you like really here, holding in mind that you want to come from above. That's the important thing to hold in mind at this point here. So any light that we've got hitting this model that we're imagining, or that we're trying to inspire in the imagination of anyone looking at it, we want it to be coming from above. So if our brush strokes come from above, then kind of by definition, if we use these bricks as an example, probably a little bit heavy-handed there, but not too bad. We can have them caught from the top edge rather than from bottom edges or side edges. On the subject of side edges though, these pillars, which are fantastic in terms of the level of detail they've got, if I stipple here a little bit to remove some of the excess from the brush, until I'm happy with the amount of paint that is going to be leaving, you can go side to side on. And that'll make sure that you hit the left and right edges so they get a kind of a preferential edge highlight. You can use a combination of the two, but if you were to only get these from the top like this, you'd miss out the detail. You get on their edges. So generally speaking, with dry brushing, you want to be going across, not along details in order to get them to pick up. So we'll take that approach all over the entirety of the model. I will have a little bit of a softer touch towards the bottom and a slightly heavier touch towards the top, because I want the bright stuff to be concentrated more towards the top of the miniature. So I said I'd be showing you how to use the dampening pad. I use this before I start, but also during the process of dry brushing, and the way that I put water in it is whichever brush I'm using, I take one drop, work that in there, press it in with my finger. You don't want it sat on top of the foam, particularly the first time you put it in. It will sit on top until it's been absorbed better. You can just speed that up with your finger. And then one way to have a softer touch down below is, rather than going back to your palette for more paint, while you're in these lower areas, you can reawaken the paint that's on the brush and then use that as a way to get it to leave. It'll also make sure that you keep things smooth, gentle, and kind of slightly thinner. You're not caking on paint at this point. And what that means is that when we get to the final stage, things won't look as dry. They'll look more smooth. Okay, so the next stage is to use grey cere. This one is, it's a base paint and it's quite a bit lighter than our previous stage, so we're going to be a little bit careful. I'm trying to do one here without mixing paints, because it's something that I do a lot, but we've had requests on whether this stuff works if you don't mix your paint. So the only mixing that's going on here is kind of by accident, and it's mixing within our brush bristles. So we've had a previous stage on them, and as a result, whatever we do is going to be softened. So it won't be quite as bright as if we used a clean new brush, or if we cleaned our brush entirely between steps or something like that. So it's a little bit more forgiving. Take it out. You want it to hit all sides of your brush. I know it's round, but from every angle, however you want to put it. Test it on your texture palette. This is going to stand out a little bit more. And I'm going to be proceeding with quite a bit more care, because it's a much brighter colour we've got. Areas like this, if you still want them to be picked up, you can get in there with a bit of stippling. As long as your brush isn't overly saturated, it's not something you need to worry about too much, and then you can return to your dampening pad to reawaken it, and that will also avoid you caking up large amounts of paint on these bristles, which is it's not good for the quality of your work. It's not good for the length of your brushes, their life expectancy, that type of stuff. So we're doing exactly what we did in the previous stage, concentrating top to bottom, left to right on the pillars, and again we're going to have a lighter touch at the bottom than we are at the top. So if you imagine we became light and this line with our second layer, we're going to become light at this line with our third layer, this one. So there'll be less of this landing down below. We still want to catch all the edges with it, but we don't want to catch the kind of the large flat areas quite as much here as we do here. So at this point, we're bringing Corax White into the equation. Now, Corax White is not white. It's a very, very light grey. So using this base here and then the layer version, which is White Scar, it opens up a few things. One of them is that it allows us to highlight our white with a brighter white. So that's good for a couple of reasons. It means that we've still got another layer of visual interest we can add, even though we've gone to a colour that feels like it's the lightest. It also means that this is going to be, there's slightly less of a worry about this standing out too much at this point. So this is laying a foundation for our super white. Going to be going quite carefully, top to bottom, I keep saying, and we're really, you can see I'm holding it at the back end of the ferrule, which is this metal section. Still using the extra large, it's the same one I started with, and I'm holding it on the crimping, which is the section at the back, and using a flicking motion. All of these details, we want to give the impression they're lit from above and really carefully catch them from their edges here. So I'll do that all over. The bricks are of particular interest. I can show that here probably. So carefully removing it on the texture palette. This enables us to see just how heavy the paint is going to exit the brush, and we're going from the top here. So hopefully you can see that that's showing up. There's bricks. That brick section is top lit at this point. This bar has been top lit. That
arch there has been top lit. That's because we're coming from above. This stuff's really important. Now these sections that are shadowed below, if you want to get in somewhere and you want to top light it, it's a bit more tricky. I call this rolling. So you do a rolling highlight with a dry brush, and that will allow you to get into areas and just hit lips. So you want to highlight in that window, you can do that. And we'll be doing that all over the model, catching those sides, catching those top edges. All right, finishing touches. So we've got white scar here, which as we discussed is our whiter white. You could even, not a proper clean, but using a dampening pad, you could even do a kind of a mini clean here to make sure that there's the smallest amount of contaminants on the brush in terms of the previous stages. We have removed quite a lot of those as we've gone though, so shouldn't be something we need to worry about. And then super softly from the top, cap these lips. You could choose just to catch tops of arches or stuff like that. Make sure you give the top of the model a fair bit of attention, as that's where we want it to be brightest, fitting with what we've done. And then exactly the same again, really soft when we're towards the bottom here, and anywhere you particularly want to draw attention to, so the middle of this, the top of that, that type of thing. If you decided you wanted these flat sections to be hit with a bit more light, you can use some stippling. We've got very little paint on our brush, so we don't have to worry particularly about that. And again, be careful with the dampening pad at this stage, because you'll reawaken the previous stages of paint as well as the current stage. So if you're going to use it, remove stuff, back to your Corax white scar, sorry. Work it all the way around the brush. You want it, on whatever angle you approach your model from, you want it to be not dry, not too wet, etc. Make sure it's even, test it elsewhere. That looks about perfect. And then we're in position here to buff up these top sections if we want. A little bit of stippling, still paying attention to the 45-degree angle. And if we want to get in there and do some very specific highlighting on any bricks with a super soft touch, we're all good. Hit these from the sides. Make sure you've always got a firm grip on your model for this stuff. If it's soft, you won't get as good an effect, and you're lessening your control. These little windows here, I want them to pop from every angle. They're a lovely little detail. And then softer as I get towards the bottom. Harder here, softer towards the bottom. All right, tiny bit of finishing, and that is pretty much it. So as you can see, even if it started off looking fairly rough, that is a super solid end result. Really nice. It pops. If you wanted to do other interesting stuff with this, you could give some washes, you could put some lichen or something at the bottom. You could also use a different paint for your first coat of grey. So something in a similar spectrum would be Dark Reaper. And then you just have something that's a bit more shadowy bluey, which would be a lovely effect. I've decided to go for a pretty vanilla, just standard grey here. The only off colour is Dawnstone, which is a little bit warmer than our others. Grace here is also slightly warmer, but that's the entirety of the technique. Super solid way to do any terrain, and you can apply this on big stuff, small stuff. You can mix in paints, do some lighting on it, whatever you like. But it's a fantastic way to get stuff on the table, really effective, really fast.
So that's it. Super simple in theory, but a really high end result. I know it's just a wall, but it's important with this stuff to cover the basics and do them at a high level. I always say that a well-based army is a well-painted army. Even if what's on it is average, you can have a well-based army, and that raises the quality of everything. If you've got a really well-painted army and it's not very well-based, then that lowers the quality of everything. So making sure to put in the time, and it's a very little amount of time that you spend getting this stuff to be like twice as good as it would be if you spent half the amount of time, like 10 minutes instead of 5, is a really, really good investment. So hope you've liked the video. As I mentioned, we're going to be giving sets away once a month. So get involved down below, let us know your thoughts, your feelings, your suggestions for future content. If you've got any questions about that, or you want me to go more in depth, or you have some thoughts on this format, you like the idea of us doing fundamentals and you want me to cover how to do flesh or how to base coat, anything like that, we're happy to do whatever is the most useful for you, the viewers. So thank you very much for your involvement. Thanks for joining in. Hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you shortly.